Welcome to a journey through time, a journey to a quiet, sunlit oasis town in the heart of the Sahara, where life moves to the rhythm of the wind, the call to prayer, and the rustling of date palms. Today, we step back into the 11th century, into the daily life of a Berber oasis community under the Almoravid dynasty, a time of trade, tradition, and tranquil routines. The Almoravids, a confederation of Berber tribes, rose to power in the vast deserts of North Africa, uniting the region under their rule. But we are not here to focus on kings or conquests. Instead, we will wander through the narrow, shaded streets of a small oasis town, where the people live much as their ancestors did, connected to the earth, the seasons, and the slow passage of time. Imagine the golden light of dawn spilling over the high mud brick walls. The air is still cool, carrying the scent of baking bread and damp earth from the irrigation canals. The town is waking, but there is no rush. Here, life unfolds gently, shaped by the necessities of survival in the desert and to quiet beauty of communal living. In this first part of our series, we will set the scene, exploring the geography of the oasis, the layout of the town, and the first stirrings of morning. Close your eyes if you wish, and let yourself be carried away to this peaceful, distant world. The oasis is a jewel in the desert, a cluster of life where water rises from hidden springs or is drawn from deep wells. Date palms tower overhead, their fronds whispering in the wind, providing shade for gardens of figs, pomegranates, and barley. The town itself is a maze of earthen buildings, their walls thick to keep out the midday heat. Narrow alleys twist between homes, opening occasionally into small courtyards where children play and women gather to grind grain. At the heart of the town lies the mosque, its simple minaret rising above the rooftops. Nearby, the marketplace, still quiet at this hour, will soon hum with the bartering of traders. But for now, the only sounds are the soft clinking of pottery, the murmur of early risers at the communal well, and the occasional bray of a donkey. As the sun climbs higher, the people begin their day. Men check the irrigation channels, ensuring precious water reaches every garden. Women knead dough for the day's bread, while others weave baskets or spin wool. The rhythm is slow, methodical, each movement perfected over generations. In the next part of our journey, we will step inside one of these earthen homes, exploring its architecture, furnishings, and the quiet domestic routines that fill its rooms. But for now, let us linger here in the soft morning light, listening to the waking oasis. Let us now step inside one of the earthen homes of our Berber oasis town. The walls, made of sun-baked mud brick, are thick and smooth, keeping the interior cool even as the desert sun climbs higher. The doorway is low, inviting us to bow slightly as we enter, a humble gesture reminding us of the simplicity of this life. The main room is spacious but sparsely furnished. The floor is packed earth, swept smooth and covered in woven reed mats. Against one wall, a low wooden bench is piled with cushions stuffed with wool, a place to sit, to rest, to welcome guests. Nearby, a small clay hearth holds the embers of last night's fire, ready to be stoked for the morning meal. The air carries the faint, comforting sense of wood smoke, dried herbs, and freshly baked bread. To one side, a woven palm fiber screen partitions a sleeping area. The bedding is simple, thick woolen blankets dyed in earthy hues of ochre and indigo, folded neatly beside leather-stuffed pillows. There are no ornate carvings, no gilded decorations. Instead, beauty is found in the craftsmanship of everyday things. The geometric patterns of a woven blanket, the smooth curve of a clay water jug, the sturdy wooden chest holding family belongings. Light filters in through small, high windows, just enough to brighten the room, but not enough to let in the midday heat. In the corner, a ceramic oil lamp rests on a ledge, its wick trimmed for evening use. The walls are bare, but not stark. Over time, the women of the household may have pressed handprints into the soft clay before it dried, a quiet mark of their presence. Now, let us observe the morning routine. A woman kneels by the hearth, blowing gently on the embers before adding dried twigs. Soon, a pot of barley porridge will simmer, sweetened with dates or honey. Her hands move with practiced ease. She has done this countless times before. Nearby, her daughter rolls out dough for flatbread, the rhythmic sound of her palms against the clay board steady and soothing. Pause, crackling fire, the soft thump of kneading dough. Narrator. Outside, the men of the household have already left, some to tend the date palms, others to check the irrigation channels that bring life to the oasis. There is no hurry, no frantic rushing. Each task has its time, its season. Even the children, now playing in the courtyard, know their duties, fetching water, gathering firewood, watching over the younger ones. In the next part of our journey, we will explore the crafts of the oasis, the weaving, pottery, and metalwork that fill the workshops with quiet industry. But for now, let us linger here, in the cool dimness of this earthen home, where the air is sweet with the scent of bread and the peace of a slow, unhurried morning. As the morning sun grows warmer, the artisans of the oasis begin their work. Scattered along the shaded lanes, small workshops hum with quiet industry, each craft passed down through generations, each movement deliberate, unhurried. Let us pause here, in the dappled light beneath a palm-thatched awning, and watch as hands transform raw materials into objects of utility and beauty. Near the communal well, the potter works at his wheel, a simple wooden disc turned by hand. The clay dug from the oasis's edge and mixed with water yields easily to his fingers. With each rotation, a vessel takes shape. A water jar with a narrow neck to minimize evaporation, a wide-lipped bowl for couscous, a small oil lamp with delicate ridges to hold the wick. Later, these will be left to dry in the shade before being fired in a pit kiln, emerging the color of the earth itself. Across the lane, the weaver sits cross-legged before her upright loom. The warp threads, spun from the wool of desert sheep, are taut between two beams. Her fingers dance, guiding the shuttle back and forth, while a wooden comb presses each new row snug against the last. The pattern emerges slowly, zigzagging lines in undyed cream and deep indigo, destined to become a blanket or a saddlebag. Nearby, a basket maker coils palm fronds into sturdy containers, their edges stitched tight with sinew. In the smithy's dim shelter, the air shimmers with heat. The blacksmith pumps the goatskin bellows, coaxing flames around a copper ingot. Once molten, the metal is poured into molds, a dagger blade, a bracelet, a delicate scale for the marketplace. His apprentice files rough edges, the rasping sound blending with the call of a distant dove. These objects will travel far, traded along caravan routes for salt or silks. Even the children participate, gathering wild fibers for rope making or shaping clay into toy animals. There is no division between work and play here, only the steady transfer of knowledge, small hands learning through imitation. An old man smiles as his grandson clumsily braids a leather sandal strap, patiently correcting the twist. As midday approaches, the artisans set aside their tools. The potter covers his unfinished vessels with damp cloths. The weaver ties off her thread. In the stillness, we hear only the wind and the faint trickle of the irrigation channel. This is the rhythm of the oasis, labor and rest in balance, like the turning of the seasons. When we return, we will wander to the gardens and orchards where the bounty of the oasis is coaxed from the desert. But for now, let the tapping of looms and the scent of warm metal linger in your thoughts, a testament to hands that shape the world without haste. Beyond the town's earthen walls, where the desert's edge meets the life-giving waters of the oasis, a patchwork of gardens unfolds, each plot a testament to patience and careful tending. Here, beneath the dappled shade of date palms, the people coax sustenance from the arid land, their hands moving in harmony with ancient rhythms. The heart of this system is water, precious, measured, shared. Narrow channels lined with fired clay or woven palm fronds carry it from the main well to every garden. A man adjusts a wooden sluice gate, diverting a thin silver thread to his barley plot. The sound is barely a whisper, this liquid wealth seeping into the soil, darkening the earth as it goes. 3 layers of cultivation thrive here. High above, the date palms stretch their feathery fronds, filtering the harsh sun. Between their trunks, fruit trees, figs, pomegranates, and apricots take root. At ground level, vegetables and grains spread their leaves, onions with their papery skins, twisting vines of melons, and the gray-green spikes of barley. Nothing is wasted. Even the palm's fallen leaves are gathered to weave into mats or burned for kindling. An elderly woman moves between the beds, her indigo-dyed robe brushing the plants as she checks for ripening figs. Her fingers know each tree, each vine. She pauses to pinch a basil leaf, releasing its scent, then kneels to loosen the soil around a young onion shoot. Nearby, a girl collects snails from the damp edges of the irrigation ditch. Tonight's stew will be flavored with wild thyme and these tiny, sun-warmed morsels. The barley is nearly ready. Men cut the stalks in bunches, tying them with twisted grass. Later, the grain will be ground between flat millstones, the rhythmic scraping echoing through the courtyards at dusk. For now, the harvesters pause in the shade, passing a clay jug of well water. Their laughter is low, their gestures slow. This is not the frantic reaping of wetter lands, but a measured gathering, perfectly timed to the oasis's gentle abundance. As the sun reaches its zenith, the gardens grow still. Even the insects cease their buzzing. The farmers retreat to their homes, leaving the plots to bask in the golden light. The water channels continue their quiet work, sustaining life drop by precious drop. When next we meet, we will enter the cool confines of the town's kitchens, where these garden gifts are transformed into daily meals. But for now, let the image of these green sanctuaries linger, a fleeting dream of shade and sustenance, cradled in the desert's embrace. As the sun begins its slow descent, the kitchens of the oasis come alive, not with the clamor of pots and pans, but with the quiet, deliberate sounds of meals being prepared. Here, in the dim, earthen alcoves where the air smells of wood smoke and cumin, generations of knowledge are passed from hand to hand, from memory to memory. A grandmother sits cross-legged near the hearth, her hands moving in steady circles as she works millet flour and water into a smooth, elastic dough. Beside her, a clay tagine, its conical lid trapping every whisper of steam, bubbles with a stew of lamb, dried apricots, and the saffron she traded for at last season's market. The scent is rich and golden, curling into the still air like an invitation. Nearby, young girls grind roasted barley in a stone quern, the back and forth motion wearing smooth grooves into the rock over years. The resulting flour will be mixed with water and left to ferment overnight, becoming tomorrow's breakfast porridge. Nothing is hurried. Even the act of peeling garlic is done with care, each papery layer removed, each clove set aside with quiet reverence for its role in the meal. The flavors here are simple but profound. Hand-harvested salt from distant Tagaza, wild honey gathered from cliffs where bees nest, pungent preserved lemons from the family's last year's harvest. A mortar holds a paste of freshly pounded cumin and coriander. The woman grinding it pauses to let a toddler dip a finger in, laughing as his face twists at the unfamiliar bitterness. As evening falls, the men return from the gardens and workshops. They wash their hands and faces at the courtyard cistern, the water cool against sun-warmed skin. The low wooden eating tray is brought out, its surface worn smooth by decades of use, and laden with round flatbreads still puffed from the hearth. The tagine is uncovered with ceremony, its aromas blooming into the twilight. There are no individual plates here. Hands reach, right hands only, as is proper, to tear bread and scoop up tender meat. A bowl of olives makes its way around the circle, each person taking no more than 2 or 3 to leave enough for others. The talk is of small things: the health of a neighbor's newborn goat, the progress of the date harvest, the upcoming marriage of the blacksmith's daughter. Laughter comes in soft bursts, like the popping of embers in a fire. When the meal is done, the children are sent to deliver portions to the elderly widow next door. The pot is scraped clean, not a single grain of couscous wasted, and the last sips of mint tea are shared as the stars begin to appear. Stomachs are full, yes, but so too are hearts. This is nourishment measured not just in sustenance, but in shared labor, shared stories, shared silence. In our next meeting, we will wander beneath the moonlight to observe the oasis at rest, the night watchmen, the storytellers, the quiet rituals that ease the town into slumber. But for now, let the memory of this shared meal linger, a humble feast, offered and received with equal gratitude. As the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in washes of amber and violet, the oasis exhales. The heat of the day lifts like a curtain, and the town eases into its evening rhythms, not with ceremony, but with the quiet familiarity of a well-worn blanket being drawn close. Men return from the fields, their tools slung over shoulders, their footsteps kicking up little puffs of dust that glow briefly in the slanting light. At the mosque's threshold, they remove their sandals, the leather soles worn thin from a day's labor, and enter to pray. The murmured verses drift through the open windows, weaving with the scent of damp earth from the irrigation channels. In the courtyards, women light ceramic oil lamps, each flame a tiny trembling sun held in the palm of the night. A girl carefully trims the wick with her fingernails, ensuring it will burn cleanly until bedtime. The light spills through latticework screens, casting intricate shadows that dance across the walls like fleeting dreams. Now comes the time for quiet industry. An elder spins wool by touch alone, her fingers remembering what her fading eyes cannot see. Nearby, children gather around their grandfather as he repairs a fishing net, their small hands mimicking his knots with lengths of leftover twine. There is no urgency here, only the meditative repetition of tasks that need doing and the comfort of doing them together. The nightly tea ceremony unfolds with the precision of ritual. A boy blows gently on the coals in the brazier, coaxing them to glow hotter for the kettle. His mother measures mint leaves, dried last summer and stored in a sealed clay jar, while his father pours the first bitter serving back into the pot, ensuring the flavors marry perfectly. The third pouring, sweetened with a scant spoonful of precious honey, is served in small glasses that catch the lamplight like liquid gold. Outside the walls, the night watchman makes his rounds. His staff taps rhythmically against the irrigation ditches, partly to check for blockages, partly to warn away desert foxes. Occasionally, he pauses, tilting his head to listen to the vast silence beyond the oasis. The desert at night is not empty, but full of small sounds. The scuttle of a jerboa, the whisper of wind over dunes, the distant howl of a jackal that makes the sheep huddle closer in their pen. One by one, the lamps are extinguished. The town settles into slumber beneath a blanket of stars so thick they seem to drip from the sky. Only the baker remains awake, feeding last night's coals to prepare for the pre-dawn baking. His solitary silhouette moves behind the screen of his workshop, a shadow among shadows, tending the fire that will greet the new day. When we return, we will witness the oasis at dawn, the first stirrings of life as the world begins anew. But for now, let yourself drift with the townspeople into rest, cradled by the certainty that the palms will still stand guard when morning comes. Before the sun crests the dunes, before the first call to prayer drifts from the minaret, the oasis stirs in half-light. This is the hour when the world holds its breath, when the line between dreaming and waking blurs like charcoal smudged across parchment. In the baker's dim workshop, the last embers of the night's fire glow beneath layers of ash. His practiced hands brush them aside, feeding dried palm fronds to build a flame for the morning's bread. The dough, kneaded before midnight and left to rise in woven baskets, now pillows under his fingers as he shapes it into rounds. Soon, the scent of baking will weave through the streets, rousing sleepers as gently as a mother's hand. Outside, the water-bearer makes his rounds. His donkey's hooves whisper against packed earth as they stop at each household's large storage jar. The splash of water filling the vessels echoes like hidden springs, a private music for those still curled beneath woolen blankets. At one doorway, an elderly man sits already upright on his sleeping mat, sipping yesterday's mint tea gone cold, watching the stars fade one by one. The communal well becomes a stage for dawn's quiet ballet. Women arrive with clay jars balanced on their hips, their greetings no louder than the flutter of moth wings. They pause to run damp hands over their faces, a small ablution, a moment of gratitude for the new day. The youngest among them, still heavy-eyed, leans against the cool stone rim while her mother draws water, watching the liquid surface mirror the lightening sky. In the date palm groves, the night watchman gathers his things, a half-eaten fig, a goatskin cloak damp with dew. As he passes the watchfire reduced to ashes, he scatters them with his foot, releasing one last curl of smoke that rises straight up in the windless air. His replacement arrives yawning, rubbing his hands together for warmth despite the desert's promise of later heat. And then, as if some unseen conductor has raised his baton, the oasis truly awakens. The muezzin's voice spirals upward, sweet and clear. Shutters creak open. A shepherd clicks his tongue to gather his flock. Somewhere, a baby fusses and is soothed. The first golden rays touch the highest palm fronds, then spill downward like honey over the walls, the gardens, the still sleepy faces of children reluctant to leave their dreams. When next we meet, we will follow the rhythms of the marketplace as it comes alive with trade and quiet chatter. But for now, let this dawn linger, this perfect fleeting moment when all possibilities remain open and the day stretches ahead like an unfurled scroll waiting to be inscribed. As the morning matures, the heart of the oasis shifts to its marketplace, a modest square where the desert silence yields to the murmur of bartering, the rustle of goods, and the quiet music of daily exchange. Here, under patchwork awnings of woven goat hair, the economy of survival unfolds without hurry, without fuss. A date seller settles onto his mat, arranging dried fruit in precise pyramids, amber-halved deglets beside plump medules still glistening with their own honey. Beside him, a Berber woman from the mountains lays out blocks of beeswax, their scent earthy sweet, while her daughter stacks rounds of goat cheese wrapped in palm leaves. No voices hawk wares here. Quality speaks for itself, and customers come knowing what they seek. Near the well, the pottery merchant examines a newly arrived caravan of glazed tagines, their emerald and saffron hues startling against the earth tones of the oasis. A farmer runs his thumb along a jug's rim, checking for the telltale smoothness that indicates skilled craftsmanship. Their negotiation is a dance of pauses and gestures. 3 dates offered in exchange, a considering head tilt, finally a clasp of hands to seal the bargain. At the marketplace's center, the weighing station keeper presides over his brass scales with solemn patience. A woman places a lump of raw copper in one tray. In the other, he adds and subtracts lead weights until the balance beam hovers perfectly level. The transaction is silent, but for the clink of metal, no distrust mars this ancient ritual of fairness. Nearby, a spice merchant's stall creates a fragrant cloud, cinnamon sticks like rolled parchment, turmeric staining the air gold, peppercorns rattling in their scoops. Children dart between the stalls, not as nuisances, but as necessary participants, fetching water for thirsty traders, holding donkeys' reins during loading, earning a dried apricot or two for their help. An old storyteller gathers them briefly, his voice barely above a whisper, as he recounts tales of desert jinn who reward patience and punish greed. Lessons disguised as entertainment for ears too young to recognize instruction. As midday approaches, the market's energy wanes. Awnings are folded, unsold goods bundled back into saddlebags. The last transaction, a handful of salt traded for a leather flask of argan oil, leaves both parties nodding in satisfaction. What remains is not emptiness, but a sense of completion, needs met, bonds reinforced, the invisible threads of community woven tighter with every exchanged smile and measured handful of grain. When we return, we'll step away from the town center to explore the oasis's outer edges, where farmers, herders, and nomadic traders blur the boundary between desert and civilization. But for now, let the market's quiet symphony linger, the unspoken understanding that abundance is not in having much, but in having enough and sharing it well. Where the last garden wall meets the open desert, a different rhythm takes hold, neither fully settled nor wholly nomadic, but something fluid between. Here, at the oasis fringe, the boundaries blur like mirages on the horizon, and the exchange between sand and sanctuary unfolds in quiet, necessary harmony. A goat herder props open the thorn-brush gate to his pen, letting his animals amble toward the scrubland. His youngest daughter follows, carrying a waterskin nearly as large as herself, not for the goats who know to return at midday, but for any desert travelers she might encounter. The family's 3 dogs pad alongside her, tongues lolling, their ears twitching at sounds too distant for human notice. To the east, a cluster of camel hair tents appears overnight, nomadic traders pausing to replenish supplies. Their negotiations with the oasis dwellers follow ancient protocols. Salt blocks from Timbuktu are laid beside woven wool rugs. Dates are sampled with solemn nods. Children from both groups eye each other curiously before joining in a game involving pebbles and traced lines in the dust. The interaction is both commerce and ceremony, a reaffirmation of mutual need. At the marginal gardens where the soil grows sandier, the crops change character. Hardy barley replaces tender vegetables. Drought-resistant henna bushes spread their leaves like outstretched hands. An old woman moves through these plots with a different gait, her feet reading the soil's moisture like a blind person reads Braille. She pauses to adjust a buried clay pot that slowly seeps water directly to roots, an ancient irrigation trick that conserves every precious drop. The desert is never silent to those who know its language. A shepherd tilts his head at the cry of a distant falcon, a signal that a sandstorm might be brewing beyond the horizon. He begins guiding his flock toward the stone shelter his grandfather built generations ago, its walls aligned to deflect the worst of the wind. Nearby, a young boy practices this ancestral knowledge, using a stick to trace weather patterns in the dust while his grandmother watches approvingly. As afternoon wanes, the nomadic traders pack their unsold goods, not in disappointment, but with the contentment of those who know another oasis awaits. The goat herder's daughter returns with her waterskin empty and her eyes bright with stories of strangers who gifted her a carved date pit. And on the very edge of the cultivated land, an almond tree stands half in sand, half in tended soil, its roots gripping both worlds, its branches heavy with the promise of next season's harvest. In our final installment, we will circle back through the oasis at twilight, noting how the rhythms we've observed intertwine, how the ordinary becomes extraordinary when seen as a whole. But for now, let us linger here at the threshold, where the wind carries both the scent of baking bread and the tang of open desert, reminders that life exists in the balance between shelter and expanse. And so the day comes full circle, as all days must. The same sun that rose over baking bread and morning prayers now lingers on the horizon, painting the palms in fire and amber. Let us walk these familiar paths one last time, not as observers, but as companions to the rhythms we've come to know. The potter examines his latest firing, a line of ochre jars cooling in the dusk. One bears the faint fingerprint of his daughter pressed into the clay, He runs his thumb over it before carrying the pieces inside. Nearby, the weaver ties off her final knot, her loom's warped thread slackening like tired muscles. The half-finished rug will wait. Patterns can only emerge one row at a time. In the gardens, the water channels whisper their evening song. An old man walks the ditches, lifting and lowering sluice gates with ceremonial care, each motion both practical and reverent. Tomorrow's water must be fairly divided, but tonight's task is simply to listen, to the gurgle of streams finding their appointed paths, to the thirsty earth drinking deep. At the communal oven, children cluster like sparrows, clutching scraps of dough to be baked into small, sweet treats. The baker pretends not to notice there are sneaky handfuls of dates mixed in. This is the oldest theft, the most ancient kindness. When the treats emerge blistered and caramelized, the sharing is silent, the joy wordless. The marketplace, once lively, now lies quilted in shadows. A lone merchant counts the day's earnings not in coins, but in exchanges. 6 pottery jugs for wool, a sack of grain for metal repairs, stories, traded for stories. His fingers trace the accounts etched into his wooden tally stick. Each groove a memory, a face, a promise upheld. As stars prick through the violet sky, the oasis exhales. Lamps flicker behind lattice screens. A mother hums a lullaby older than the Almoravids, older than Islam, perhaps older than the oasis itself. The tune needs no words. The rocks know it. The palms know it. The slowly turning millstones will remember it long after we forget. And so we leave them here, not frozen, but alive. The baker will rise before dawn. The potter's daughter will press new fingerprints into wet clay. The irrigation channels will keep their patient vigil. This is not an ending, but a pause, one breath in the centuries-long breath of the oasis. Sleep now and dream of clay jars cooling in the dusk, of water finding its way through dry places, of hands doing necessary work with unhurried care. The desert holds its breath with you. Tomorrow, always tomorrow, the sun will rise again over the gardens.